Law enforcement has always been a very difficult job. To help prepare future peace officers for their roles in law enforcement, all state and the federal government have created a very specific, condensed, and rigorous training program through a prescriptive process known as the Peace Officer Standards and Training, more commonly known as POST. State post departments are responsible for the development of academy training courses as well as peace officer annual training requirements. The typical law enforcement academy ranges in length from right around 8 weeks to 26 weeks on the long end. The academies are all similar in that every state in the nation uses a prescribed set of laws, training processes, and coursework to develop their academies in hopes of producing well-rounded, educated, and ethical peace officers. And for the most part, I believe they do a good job. But recently, the ethics of many law enforcement departments have been called into question, and as a result, many state governments are moving to increase training, and California is no exception. However, in California's case, it's not training that the government bureaucrats want to mandate. It's indoctrination to woke ideology through Assembly Bill 89, which amends the minimum qualifications required to be a peace officer. In this episode of Office of the Patriot, I delve into AB 89, the curricula that is proposed to meet the new educational standard, and discovered the intent of this law isn't to get better educated peace officers, it's to indoctrinate them into woke ideology. Hello, and welcome to the Office of the Patriot. In this office, I try to make sense out of the nonsense of the progressive left and rhino right. If you are a subscriber, thank you for your continued viewership. It is appreciated. If you are a returning viewer, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss any future presentations. And if you are a first-time visitor to my channel, well, congratulations on finding it. It's usually hidden by the YouTube algorithm. However, I do hope you find the content worth coming back for. My name is Myron Ybarra, and I'm your host. It's funny, rather funny yet not surprising that California is in my crosshairs again. And the funny part of the story, or maybe a better word is ironic, is that California was one of the first states to set up a commission for post. And this was done in 1959. 14 years later, the Federal Commission on Law Enforcement and Administration of Justice encouraged all states to follow suit and develop their own post commissions to set up minimum standards for recruitment, education, and certification of all peace officers. This led to a prescriptive process of peace officer training known as police academies. You're probably wondering, what do they teach at a police academy? Well, some of the very general classes include report writing, firearms training, chemical agent training, and communication techniques. Some of the more specific classes, and there are a lot, include recognizing mental health crisis, victim witness response, conflict management, cross-cultural communication, WMD identification, surveillance techniques, processing digital evidence, vehicle stops, traffic incident investigation, use of force, communicable diseases, universal precautions, juvenile justice, vehicle and property searches, pat-down searches, firearm safety, shooting techniques, tactical threat engagement, drug identification, crime scene preservation, ethics, leadership concepts, peace officer liability, constitutional law, criminal law, courtroom process and procedure, and the list goes on and on and on, as it should. There are so many components to being a peace officer that training is paramount. I mean, if we're holding citizens accountable to the law, then it stands to reason that peace officers should not only know the law, but also know how to engage the public. But what happens when the concept of a well-trained and competent peace officer intersects with woke ideology? Well, you get AB 89. This bill requires the California Post Commission, in conjunction with the Chancellor of California Community Colleges, to establish a modern policing program. It's essentially an AS degree. So now the state of California just made college indoctrination a prerequisite to becoming a peace officer, which seems a little self-serving, but okay. They're educating future officers. That can't be a bad thing, right? The reasoning behind this new modern policing program is that the California legislature has determined through an undisclosed study, which probably means that that study never took place, that this study has also shown that a better educated officer performs better in the academy, receives higher supervisor evaluations, has fewer disciplinary problems and fewer accidents, or is assaulted less often and misses fewer days of work than their counterparts. Okay, given my nearly 3 decades in this field, I can tell you that this line is complete and utter bullshit. I know quite a few officers with unquestionable moral integrity and vastly superior deductive reasoning skills than their college-educated counterparts. This new law states that the modern policing program should focus on courses pertinent to law enforcement, which shall include, but not limited to, psychology, communications, history, ethnic studies, law, and those determined to develop necessary critical thinking skills and emotional intelligence. And here's the problem. But not limited to leaves the chancellor's office a lot of latitude in developing this coursework, and they took advantage of it. In fact, all of the subjects that are required in the modern policing program, all of them, are currently taught in all basic academies. I gave you a partial list earlier in this presentation, and a link to the complete list is available in the description section below. So why the big push to teach the exact same thing that is currently being taught in virtually every peace officer academy? It's because what's being proposed by the Chancellor's office is not education. It's indoctrination. The Chancellor's office submitted a report to the California legislature in early November of this year, just last month. In the letter to Assembly Member Joan Sawyer, who was the architect of AB 89, the Chancellor noted that she was proud to present a vision for the modern policing degree and the future of law enforcement, inclusive of diverse perspectives of stakeholders, our 2020 call to action against systemic racism, and our goals for equity as laid forth in the California Community College Vision of 2030. Now, if I didn't know any better, I would say that the opening in this letter sounds like a preamble to the Great Reset. The Chancellor's office claims that this bill was in response to heightened interest in decreasing officers' use of force and to take action against structural racism. And I have to tell you that I really hate that phrase. As I said, I've worked in law enforcement for nearly 3 decades. And in all of that time, I have never had one class or one supervisor that taught, promoted, or instructed me to engage in structural racism. Ladies and gentlemen, it does not exist. Do people have biases? Sure. But these biases are not based on or derived from any type of organizing structure of any peace officer organization. So, if you're wondering what classes the Chancellor's office suggests in addition to the mandatory ones spelled out in AB 89, here's just a few of them. The history of policing, which we already have. Racial and cultural diversity. Social justice. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, also known as DEI. Interpersonal and cultural communication. Introduction to statistics for sociology. Emotional intelligence. Introduction to transformational policing, I have no idea what that means, and mental health. Some of the goals, or in education speak, learning objectives that this modern policing degree will have are understanding how one's personal biases or life experiences might impact the action one takes when working with the community. Independently make appropriate decisions, especially those related to ensuring equitable justice and treatment. Exhibit open-mindedness to non-traditional ideas. Show awareness of self and of cultures within different communities, including language, customs, beliefs, and gender identity. And this last one really cracks me up because many peace officer oaths of office include something like this already. Understanding the role of police in a democratic society in which all individuals are entitled to equal protection under law and no individual is above the law regardless of their social, economic, or political station. What we have here is the political arm reaching into the process of policing, which is a very dangerous thing. California politicians and appointed bureaucrats are taking isolated incidents like the death of George Floyd to make a generalization that peace officers today and departments are not adequately trained or mature enough for the job. And with that generalization, the California government is using its legislative power to order the re-education, in reality, which is indoctrination, of prospective peace officers. By doing this, you're going to have more officers questioning and thus failing to act when use of force is an appropriate response for a given situation. Further, the California public college system is more than happy to provide these classes to the prospective recruits. As I said in the beginning of the presentation, I'm not opposed to education, and I do agree that an educated and informed peace officer is less of a liability than an undereducated and ill-informed one. But after reviewing the reasons and the coursework that is to be mandated in this new modern policing program, I'm wondering whether or not these classes are going to be beneficial or if they will prove to be a liability on the job. My guess is the latter. This concludes today's presentation of Office of the Patriot. If you enjoyed the content, please take the time to like, subscribe, and share my channel on your social media. It is appreciated. And as always, have a blessed day and stay safe out there.